I was scraping burnt lentils off the bottom of the pot when the station's lights flickered. Again. "Not today, please," I muttered, smacking the side of the ancient induction range with my spoon. The kitchen lights steadied, but the hum of the ventilation dropped half a pitch, like the station had taken a tired breath. Life on Outpost Karachi 3 wasn't glamorous. We were a refueling and relay point between the inner colonies and the dark beyond. Supply ships came, got what they needed, and disappeared back into the black. No one came here to stay, which is why it was a cosmic joke that I, the person least suited for isolation, had somehow ended up station cook. I ladled some of the soup into a metal bowl and sniffed. Thick yellow dal, a hint of cumin, coriander, dehydrated chili if you were lucky. Comfort food, the kind of thing that felt like home even when you were thousands of kilometers above a gas giant whose name no one bothered to remember. The door at the back of the kitchen hissed open. "I swear if that's Kaito asking for a fourth serving." I turned, bowl in hand, and froze. It was Kaito. A child stood in the doorway. At least my brain said child, because she was small, delicate-looking, about the height of a 10-year-old human. But that's where the similarity ended. Her skin was a deep matte gray, like basalt rock, threaded with faint lines of dull blue that pulsed slowly, like veins made of light. Her eyes were larger than ours, entirely black, reflecting the kitchen in a warped fish-eye mirror. She had no hair. Instead, smooth ridges ran over her scalp and down the back of her neck, glowing faintly. She was thin. Not just thin, she looked hollow. Her shoulders were hunched, and her movements were shaky, unsteady, like someone who'd skipped meals for far too long. She stared at the bowl in my hand. I stared at her, my brain doing that thing it does when reality doesn't match expectation. I didn't scream. I probably should have. Instead, I said, you lost, kid?" Her gaze never left the soup. She took one trembling step forward, then another, her bare feet whispering over the metal floor. Her clothing was not really clothing. Just a sort of translucent fabric wrapped around her torso and hips, like someone had tried to approximate modesty after studying humans for 5 minutes and getting bored. "Hungry," she whispered. Her voice was soft, faintly musical. The word hung in the air like a question, hungry. Every survival protocol in my head jumped up and started yelling, unknown entity, unknown biology, unknown risk. Call security, alert command. But something else was louder, the way her hand shook when she tried to steady herself on the bulkhead. The way that pulsing light under her skin fluttered faster, then dimmer, like a weak heartbeat. I set the bowl gently on the nearest table. "How did you get in here?" I asked. She didn't answer. Her eyes darted between me and the soup. Then, slowly, she reached out one 3-fingered hand. Her fingers were long and jointed strangely, but they trembled just like any hungry kid's. "Wait," I blurted. "You can't just, we don't know if you can digest." She dipped a finger into the hot soup. I flinched. "Careful, it's hot." She didn't flinch. Instead, the blue lines on her finger flared brighter where they touched the surface, then stabilized like they were reading something. She brought her finger up, examined the drip of golden liquid, and then touched it to the side of her neck. The glow under her skin rippled, spreading from the point of contact in concentric circles. "Oh," she whispered, "this is warm." Then she grabbed the bowl with both hands and drank, not sipped, drank like her existence depended on it. The spoon clattered to the table, forgotten. I watched the lentil soup vanish, and with every gulp, the blue veins along her neck and arms brightened, steadying into a strong glow. When she finally lowered the bowl, breathing hard, her black eyes seemed less glassy, more focused. She looked at me properly for the first time. "You gave this to me," she said. "Technically, I cooked it for the crew, but sure," I said weakly. "Name S. Hamza. I cook, fix things, occasionally yell at malfunctioning coffee machines. You are?" She frowned as if that question was complicated. "I am child," she said eventually. "Spawn unit, designated, too many sounds in your languages." She tilted her head. "You may call me Lyra." "Lyra," I repeated. "Okay, Lyra, where did you come from?" Her gaze flicked toward the ceiling as though she could see beyond the station hull to the distant stars. "From the dark places," she said simply. "We were passing. We listened to the quiet, then we heard your leaking." "Our what?" She waved a hand impatiently as if human vocabulary was an annoying puzzle. "Your signals, old ones, music, stories." She narrowed her eyes. "Advertisements." Her mouth twisted in confusion. "So many noises, but under the noise there was something else. Old warmth. Old patterns in your broth." I blinked. "I promise there's nothing old pattern about my doll. It's just lentils, spices, dehydrated vegetable stock." I trailed off as her markings brightened again when I said the word stock. "What did you do?" she asked softly. "To the broth." "I didn't. It's just a family recipe. My grandmother taught me." I stopped. Because the station lights flickered again. This time they didn't fully come back. The kitchen dropped into a dim emergency glow, lines of red cutting through the shadows. The ever-present hum of the station's life support deepened, then stuttered. I felt my stomach lurch. "Oh no," I whispered. "Not another power fault." Then every sound cut off. The hum of the vents, the distant clatter of tools from the maintenance bay, even the barely audible buzz of the lights vanished. It wasn't silence. It was like someone had taken the sound and scooped it out of the air. We stood in a vacuum of noise. My breath moved in and out of my lungs. I could feel it, but I couldn't hear it. My heartbeat pounded in my chest, but there was no thump, no rush of blood in my ears. I opened my mouth to curse. No sound. Panic clawed up my throat. Had I gone deaf, some kind of pressure failure? My hands flew to my ears. They felt fine. No pain, no rupture. Across from me, Lyra was very still. Her black eyes were wide. She swallowed, and the movement of her throat was the only sign she was breathing. Outside the kitchen window, the stars were wrong. People think space is static, but on a station you get used to the slow, lazy drift of everything. The curve of the gas giant's clouds, the creeping crawl of distant moons. Now everything outside looked frozen, no drift, no motion. The stars felt too sharp, like they'd been etched onto glass. Then something moved. A shadow passed over the viewport, not like a ship. It was too close, too big, too alive. The station shuddered. I didn't hear it, but I felt it through my boots. "Lyra," I mouthed, chest heaving. "What's happening?" She seemed to hear me anyway, or maybe she just knew. "She came," Lyra whispered. Her voice was audible. I realized with a lurch that the only sound in the world was her. "Who came?" I forced out, my words silent even in my own ears. Lyra's gaze fixed on the viewport. Her eyes reflected something I couldn't fully see, a shifting pattern of darkness outside. "My mother," she said. "You called her." We stumbled to the main corridor, Lyra at my side, the bowl still clutched in her thin hands like a sacred relic. The emergency lights pulsed along the floor, guiding us toward the central hub, but everything felt wrong. The doors still opened, but the hiss of hydraulics was absent. Our boots hit the metal floor with no echo. Somewhere a pipe burst, spraying vapor into the air. No sound. The silence was a pressure in my head, a tight band around my skull. We reached the hub. A few crew members were already there, faces pale, movements jerky with fear. Kaido, the chief engineer, saw me and barreled over, his mouth moving rapidly. I shook my head and pointed to my ear, then swept a hand around. No sound anywhere. Kaido cursed silently and then grabbed a tablet from his belt. He scribbled furiously and turned the screen to me. Total audio dampening, life support nominal, gravity stable, power grid unstable. External sensors blinded. Something is on the hull. I swallowed. Lyra drifted behind me like a shadow. Her eyes flicked from person to person, taking everything in with unnerving calm. One of the medical officers, Dr. Sato, spotted her and stiffened. She pointed. Her lips formed the words I could read plainly even without hearing them. What is that? I held my hands up. This is Lyra. She came from outside. That earned me a few disbelieving stares. Lyra stepped forward. She is my mother, she said aloud, and everyone flinched because her voice was the only sound in the world. You fed me. She comes to see what feeds her child. Kaido's eyes narrowed. He jabbed at the tablet again. Is she on the hull? Lyra tilted her head. She touches your walls, holds your shell, makes the noise stop so we may speak clearly. Another shudder ran through the station. Several people grabbed onto railings. A few stared at Lyra like she was a bomb. Sato stepped closer, raising both hands in a placating gesture. She mouthed carefully, is your mother dangerous? Lyra considered this. She is protective, she said finally. We travel the dark places. There is much that would drown us in noise, in signal, in interference. She quiets it. If something hurts us, she removes it from the pattern. Removes it from the pattern. My stomach twisted. Define removes, I said, knowing she'd hear me. Lyra blinked. She makes it not be. Kaido and I exchanged a look that didn't need sound to translate. This is bad. The station shook again, stronger this time. The emergency lights flickered. Above us, through the observation dome, something colossal slid into view. It wasn't a ship in any sense I recognized. It was like a living mantle of darkness draped over the station. The stars warped at its edges. Its surface was smooth and featureless, but here and there, circular irises of pale light widened and narrowed, like eyes that weren't meant to see in any human spectrum. Where it touched the station hull, reality seemed muted. The emptiness of space was somehow emptier there. Lyra's markings pulsed in synchrony with those pale irises. She listens, Lyra said softly, to what you are, to what you did. What we did, Sato mouthed, confused. Lyra pointed to the bowl in her hands. A few drops of soup still clung to the bottom. This, she said, is not just food, it is pattern, old pattern, something we have not heard in a very long time. It called to us, to her. I felt suddenly, profoundly exposed. It's just a recipe, I protested. My grandmother used to, I stopped. Because that was the thing, wasn't it? My grandmother never wrote anything down. She always said the recipe was older than she was, older than her mother, a tangle of guesses and inherited instincts. A pinch of this, a handful of that, stir until it smells like home. When I'd adapted it for the station's nutrient stock, I'd fed it into the fabricators, turned taste into numbers, ratios, chemical chains. The stock vats improvised from there, using raw proteins and minerals to recreate something like memory. And this little alien child had tasted it and said it carried old patterns. What do you mean, old? I asked Lyra. How old? She looked at me as if weighing something. We did not always live in the dark, she said quietly. Once, long ago, we lived on a world of warmth and water and air. We had kitchens, we had smells. Her eyes unfocused, like she was looking inward. We had warmth in bowls like this. She tapped the rim. But the universe became loud, too much signal. Too much noise. We changed. We left our world, left our flesh. We became different. We kept only what we needed. We traveled the quiet routes between stars. We forgot warmth. She smiled faintly, a small, broken thing, until we tasted it again in your soup. Outside, the mantle of darkness shifted, one enormous iris focusing on the observation dome. It felt like being under a microscope slide. She wants to know, Lyra whispered, if the warmth is real, if you are like we were. Or if you are only more noise. The words sank like stones into my gut. Someone grabbed my sleeve. I turned to see Commander Rava, her normally severe face openly afraid. She shoved a slate into my hands. Can it be reasoned with? You seem to be the only one it hears. If it sees us as noise, it might erase the station. I swallowed. My mouth was dry. Lyra was watching me. Can I talk to her? I asked. Your mother. Lyra inclined her head. She hears you already, but she does not yet listen. You are too small, too scattered. Then help me, I said. Translate, please. For a moment, she looked like that starving child again, clutching an empty bowl, caught between fear and fragile hope. Then she nodded. The kitchen had become our makeshift temple. We degathered there because it was central, grounded, full of things we understood: heat, smell, the familiar clutter of human life. The emergency lights bathed everything in red. The silence pressed against my eardrums. I stood at the stove, ladle in hand, staring at the giant pot of soup I'd hurriedly thrown together. Same recipe, same ratios, but my hands shook as I worked and I kept messing up the timing. The fabricator had hiccuped twice, probably because the station's power grid was slowly being strangled by whatever was wrapped around us. Behind me, the remaining crew members clustered around the tables. Some watched me. Others stared at the ceiling, where the outline of that immense presence seemed to press inward, warping the metal. Lyra stood beside me close enough that her faint warmth brushed my arm. She notices patterns, Lyra murmured, her voice the only sound. Shapes in chaos. She does not think in your words. She understands structure, sequence, resonance. You're describing a music teacher, not a cosmic horror, I muttered. Lyra's lips quirked. Music and horror are close relatives. I focused on the soup. If this was our only chance to convince an alien godmother not to erase us from existence, it had better be good. I went through the steps like a ritual. Oil, heat, spices in the pot, cumin, coriander, crushed dry chili. In the weightless early days of the station, the spices would have floated, but now the artificial gravity held them down as they hissed silently in the hot pan. Their fragrance rose, invisible but potent. I couldn't smell anything over the fear. Tell me, I said to Lyra, stirring the spices, what did your people lose when you left your world? She watched the pot. Time, she said. We gained much endurance, reach, perception, but we lost slow moments. Waiting for water to boil, waiting for dough to rise, the times between events when nothing urgent happens and you are still alive. I added the lentils, rinsed and sorted by the station's food processors, then water, then the stock, thick, concentrated, built from the memory of 100 past meals. The nutrient broth shimmered as it met the heat. Slow moments. We never had those on the station. There was always something breaking, something glitching, someone calling for help with a recycler or a clogged pipe. And yet there were slow moments. Eating together, sharing dumb stories, watching the gas giant storms roll by. Maybe that was the point. Can she feel through you? I asked Lyra. Taste what you taste. Yes, Lyra said simply. Then we're going to feed you again, I said, and hope she understands what a family dinner feels like. I turned to the crew. Sit, I mouthed, gesturing to the tables. All of you like normal, like we're just eating together. They hesitated. It felt ridiculous. The end of the world, of our world at least, wrapped around us like a fist, and I was asking them to have dinner. But one by one they obeyed. Kaito sat at the nearest table, shoulders hunched. Sato lowered herself onto a bench, her hands shaking. Commander Rivas stayed standing at first, then slowly took a seat at the head like a stern aunt reluctantly joining a family gathering. Outside, the hull groaned, or maybe that was just my imagination. I couldn't hear anything anyway. The soup thickened. I tasted a spoonful, more out of habit than necessity. It was good. Not perfect, the salt was a little off, the chili a bit uneven, but it was real, warm, comforting. I ladled a bowl for Lyra first. She cupped it in both hands, watching the steam rise. Her markings glowed. "Do I share this?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "Share it with her. Show her what it means." Lyra closed her eyes and touched her fingers to the surface of the soup again, then to her neck like before. The glow under her skin surged, then spread, lines of light racing down her arms, across her shoulders, up into her skull. Outside, the darkness pressed closer around the station. The emergency lights flickered, then steadied. I dished out bowls for the crew, moving as quickly as I could. I forced myself to treat it like any other meal service. Bowl, ladle, serve. Bowl, ladle, serve. People wrapped their hands around the warm metal. Some sniffed automatically, some hesitated. I picked up my own bowl and sat beside Kaito. We all looked at Lyra. She raised her bowl. "To the warmth," she said, voice soft but steady. "To the time between events." Then she drank. We drank with her. The soup flowed down my throat, familiar and grounding. For a moment I forgot the silent horror outside and just tasted. The way the spices woke up on my tongue, the way the lentils gave up their softness, the way the warmth spread through my chest. Lyra's entire body lit up. The blue lines under her skin flared bright white, then settled into a steady, pulsing rhythm. Her eyes rolled back for a moment, then refocused. "She feels it," Lyra whispered. "She remembers. Once she had hands to hold bowls. Once she had mouths to drink. Once she had children who laughed around tables." Her voice trembled. "Now she only has reach, signal, silence." The station shuddered again, but differently this time. Less like a crushing grip, more like a long, shuddering sigh. In the observation dome above the hub, the darkness shifted. One of the pale irises expanded, filling the dome with its ghostly light. It scanned across the kitchen, pausing on each person, on each bowl, on the steam rising in place of spoken words. I felt something brush against my mind, not a voice, not thoughts exactly, but an impression, curious, wounded, hungry in a way that had nothing to do with food. Lyra stood, bowl empty, and raised her arms. "She asks," Lyra translated, her voice echoing strangely now, layered with a deeper resonance, "if you are noise or if you are making warmth on purpose." I stood too, my knees weak. I held my bowl up toward the ceiling. "We screw up a lot," I said, knowing she would hear through Lyra. "We make a lot of noise, we build things we don't understand, hurt things we shouldn't. But this," I shook the bowl gently, "this isn't noise. This is how we remember each other, how we say, you are still here, you matter. Sit down, eat." I drew in a breath I couldn't hear. "This recipe was handed down to me," I went on, "from people who lived and died on a world I've never seen. When I cook it, I'm borrowing their hands for a while, letting them exist again a little. Isn't that what you're doing too, trying to hold on to something you once were?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the pressure in my head shifted. Listening, the impression came. then hurting, alone, not wanting to be only silence, not wanting to be only weapon. Lyra's eyes brimmed with strange, glowing tears. She did not choose this shape, Lyra whispered. She was built by our fear. We made her to protect us from the noise, but in doing so, we made her into noise's enemy. She does not know how to be gentle anymore. The iris above us contracted and expanded like a pupil struggling to focus. I lowered the bowl, my hands shaking. You don't have to be our enemy, I said, looking up. You don't have to be anyone's. Stay, watch, learn. We can make you more soup, different kinds, not just this. Kaito shot me an incredulous look. I ignored him. We're small, I admitted, and messy, but we're good at remembering. Let us remember you as something other than a killer. Let this be the first time you arrive somewhere and no one dies. Silence pressed in, heavy and absolute. Lyra's glow dimmed slightly as she listened to something only she could hear. Then she nodded slowly. She says, Lyra translated, voice breaking, that it is difficult to change patterns once they are established. It will take time, many orbits. She will need anchors, reference points, quiet places to listen without killing. Start here, I said. Use this station as one quiet place, a listening post, a kitchen. Commander Ravash shot me a look that said, did you just offer our home to a cosmic super entity? I shrugged helplessly. In the dome, the massive iris contracted to a pinpoint, then dilated again like a blinking eye. The pressure in my head eased. Sound came crashing back. The hum of the vents roared into existence, making everyone flinch. Bowls clattered against tables. Someone dropped a spoon. A distant alarm wailed, late to the party. A dozen little station noises I'd never noticed before suddenly felt precious. Emergency alerts blared over the intercom, overlapping in a chaotic chorus. System reboot complete. All personnel report. Hull stress normalized, Kaito swore, the sound weirdly comforting. Outside, the darkness slowly peeled away from the station, unwrapping like the tide pulling back from a drowning shore. The stars returned to their normal, softer glitter, but something remained. In the distance, barely visible, was a faint ripple in space, a distortion that looked almost like a curtain. Behind it, I could sense the enormity of her still there, watching, listening. Ira sagged against the table, exhausted. I caught her before she fell. Her skin was cooler now, her glow dimmer but steady. Did we survive? I asked, half joking, half not. She gave me a small smile. Yes, she said, you are no longer classified as noise. Good, Kaito muttered. I hate it when entities outside my comprehension judge my entire species. Lyra's smile widened. She will stay nearby, Lyra added. In the quiet places between your roots, she will listen to your transmissions, your recipes. Recipes? I echoed. Lyra nodded. You can encode patterns in many ways. You already do. Music, stories, instructions. She touched the metal counter affectionately. Now you will also send her warmth. You will teach her to be more than silence and erasure. Commander Ravaf folded her arms. We're not a galactic therapy center, I shrugged. We're already a refueling station and occasional breakdown shelter. What's one more service? Ravak glared at me, then sighed. Can she promise not to crush us like a tin can if someone plays the wrong song? She asked. Lyra tilted her head, listening. She says, Lyra replied, that she will try. Kaito snorted. I'll take try over erase from existence any day. The alarms finally died down as the station's systems stabilized. People began to move again, shakily finishing their soup, talking over one another now that sound was back, their voices rising and falling with that particular hysterical edge that comes after almost dying. I looked down at the pot, still half full. I grabbed a clean bowl. More? I asked Lyra. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, please, she said quietly. For me and for her. I served her another bowl. This time she didn't just gulp it down. She sipped it slowly, closing her eyes between mouthfuls like she was savoring each second. Like each drop carried something lost and found again. Outside, in the cold dark, the silent killer drifted a little farther from the station, giving us space. She would always be dangerous. That wasn't something a single meal could change. But now there was a line in her pattern that hadn't been there before, a tiny outpost, a kitchen. A bowl of soup shared between a starving alien child, a grieving cosmic entity, and a handful of frightened humans who decided, against all odds, that warmth might be stronger than fear. Lyra finished her second bowl and set it down gently. She says thank you, Lyra murmured. For not shooting you on sight, I asked. For remembering how to sit together in the quiet, she said. For reminding her that silence can be peaceful, not only deadly. I leaned back, suddenly tired. Tell her, I said, that the kitchen's open any time, as long as the power holds and the lentils last. Lyra smiled, the glow under her skin pulsing softly in time with the station's steady hum. I think, she said, that this will be a very interesting place to grow up. I blinked. Grow up. She tilted her head, ridges along her scalp catching the light. You fed me, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. On our world long ago, when someone fed a child, it meant they claimed responsibility. Care, you have become my anchor, my reference point. Kaito snickered. Congratulations, Hamza, you adopted an extra-dimensional alien kid and her terrifying murder mom. I groaned. But when Lyra slipped her hand into mine, warm, strange, and very real, I squeezed back. Fine, I said. First rule of being my anchor child, if you're hungry, you ask. No more breaking into my kitchen silently, okay? Lyra's eyes sparkled. I will try, she said. Outside in the star-flecked dark, a vast presence shifted, listening, waiting, not for screams this time, for the next bowl of soup.